right, deal dissection. This is another deal dissection of a safe house GRS. I'm Ozzy Mail, my good friend Joe Crump. Let's do a deal dissection of another deal that definitely doesn't exist in the real world and will never work in your market and your area. This is a safe house deal. You want to break this down for us, Joe? You should check out the last video we did because we really go deep with this. So we don't have to go as deep. You should be able to get more. You should understand the process now of how these deal dissections work. This is a real life deal. Joe, you want to break this down?
Yeah, and once you know how all the ins and outs work, then you can start looking at the numbers and say, okay, well here's a different
Yeah.
property, and we're going to show you the as we'll put these pictures up here on the screen so you can see what the actual house looks like. This is another property. This is different than the one we did in the last deal dissection, but it was basically the same price. Bought it for 153,000. Seller paid $5,000 in closing costs that we negotiated when we dealt with them. We got him to pay $3,500 prorated taxes. So he had to come to closing with $149,000 to purchase this property. It'll rent for $1,500 a month. It needed maybe $2,500 in cosmetic repairs and, like some appliances and some paint. So some really basic stuff, but it looked nice. And you can see these pictures. This is what it looked like before we did any work to it. We're going to sell this property at $175,000 on a lease option sale. We're going to get $240 a month of down payment assistance. In addition to the $1,500 a month that they're going to get, this is going to go to the owner of the property. So this is, paying all cash on this property. So, did I say 1,500? I went 1,550 a month of income is the plan on this one. So 1,550 a month income, taxes at 161, insurance at 50, property management at 150, total cost $361. Total income after expenses is $1,139 a month. That's what he'll get because he has no mortgage to pay, right? He's got these other expenses that I just outlined, but he doesn't have a mortgage. So $1,139 a month times 12 months, $13,668 divided by that $149,000 purchase price. That equals a 9.17% cash on cash return. So that's just the cash on cash return that he's getting on this property. We're also assuming that he's going to get 10% annual appreciation on this property. And we know that he's going to get depreciation from the IRS, so another 1% of depreciation. So that's a 20.17% return on investment with a non-leveraged investment, 20% return.
Yeah.
You don't get this on any other kind of return.
Warren
Unless,
Buffett money. Yeah.
yeah, and this is money you get on active investing, not on passive investing.
Yeah.
But what we're doing here is passive investing, where you're not doing anything. He's the buyer is going to do nothing. He's doing none of this work, and he's going to get this 20% on his money.
This will be the first time he sees the house. Not really, but
Pretty much. I mean,
yeah.
pretty much. Yeah. I think that when you start working with us, you say, yeah, just go for it, Joe. I trust you. I know what you're doing. You know what you're doing. You've already explained the process. Give me the best deal and the best house that you can, and get it filled with the best tenants that you can, and take care of me. And that's how those are the people that we want to work with. People
Yeah.
that have a level of trust for us and know that we're going to look out for them. We're going to have their back in this process, and make it work for them.
Yeah.
So let's say that that he leveraged this property, because I want you to see it both ways, because leverage makes you a ton of extra money. So if you have an 80% mortgage on a $149,000 property, that's a new mortgage of $119,200. At 7.5% interest rate, and I'm assuming a full doc loans. There's DSCR loans, there's full doc loans. depending on your credit, you can get different types of loans. But let's say you got good credit and you can get a 7.5% interest full doc loan, and you amortize that over 30 years. So your principal and interest payment's going to be $828 a month on this. So you've got $29,800 is your down payment. $119,200 is your new loan. Your monthly income is going to be $1,550 per month, minus your taxes, insurance, property management. You add those together, it comes to $361. Add that to your principal and interest, and your total monthly payment on a leveraged investment is $1,189 per month. If you subtract that 1189 from the 1550 income, gross income, that means that your positive cash flow monthly is $361 a month. Now, take that $361 a month and you apply it to the principal each month. And if you do that, instead of taking it out, you're applying it to principal. If you do that, you'll pay off that loan in less than 15 years, half the time of a 30-year mortgage. This is absolutely phenomenal. Only
Yeah.
$361 extra a month, pays it off in half the time. So the next thing that you're going to do, though, because we
And
want
that's
to pay
not
off,
out of pocket, by the way.
yeah,
Only
none of that's out of your pocket. It's all coming
yeah,
from your tenant.
yeah,
It's all coming from your tenant. On top of that, you're going to get down payment assistance because we're selling these properties on lease options, and we're financing part of their down payment, which means that they're going to pay another, a chunk of money, as monthly as a down payment, and that'll work out to about $240 a month on the down payment assistance. So if you add that $240 to that $361 that you're already making, and you add that to your principal payment, now you're going to pay this property off in about 10 years.
yeah,
10 years you own this property, and you put in $40,000 and you own a property that is, worth at least $150,000, but over 10 years, it's probably going to double in value. Anyway, here's the
yeah,
formula for calculating the ROI on a leveraged investment. So I think I mentioned this in the last video, but let me go over it again. Return on investment equals the net profit divided by the total investment times 100. So $149,000 house, total cash investment is calculated with 20% down payment, 29,800 plus $6,000 of closing costs, approximately total of $35,800 an investment. That's the investment you need to make in order to buy that property. So the total net profit is calculated. 10% appreciation, that's 15,500 on this property. Your depreciation, about 1%, so $1,500 a month. Your annual buy down on the note, your part of the principal part of your payment every month. That's only going to be about $1,200 annually, plus $900 a month is the annual rising rent. So every year your rent is going to go up by about $900 annually, plus you're going to get $4,332 a month positive cash flow after your debt service. That was that $351 a month that I was talking about. So you add those together, and that means that you've got $23,432 a month annually coming in as your net profit. That's after all your expenses. Now let's subtract a few more potential expenses or potential costs like vacancy and repairs. So let's say you have a 3% vacancy, which is normally what I have in my portfolio. Sometimes it gets higher than that, sometimes less. If you have only one property that you own and it's vacant, you've got 100% vacancy. So, these numbers can be skewed depending on how many properties you've got. But let's say 3% vacancy. And the way you figure that is $1,500 a month rent times 3% times 12, and that comes to $540. Also you have potential repairs. Let's say 5% of your income has to go towards repairs. So $1,500 times 5% times 12 months equals $900. So 540 for the vacancy, $900 for potential repairs. So your net annual profit is $23,432. That's your net annual profit before possible costs, minus the other possible costs, of the 540 and the $900. That leaves a net annual profit of $21,992. That 21,992 divided by your initial investment of 35,800 times 100 gives you your return on investment on this leveraged investment. And it comes out to 61%, 61.43%. So that figures in. I know that I make a big deal out of this every time because it is
Yeah.
a big deal. 61% on any investment is pretty darn amazing. So that
Yeah.
figures in debt service, appreciation, depreciation, buy down on the note, repairs, vacancy, taxes, insurance, property management costs. And if you apply the money that's coming in from the tenant to the mortgage, it'll pay off the loan in 10 years. If you don't figure in the appreciation at all, if you just say it's not going to appreciate at all and stay static, then you can figure your net annual profit, with get rid of that 15,500 of appreciation. That means your net annual profit comes down to 7,900 net annual profit, 7,932 net annual profit, minus vacancies and repairs. That brings it down to 6492. And you divide that 6492 by your total investment, 35,800 times 100. That means you had an 18%,
18%. Yeah.
18.13% return on investment. That's if you don't add any appreciation of the property at all. And properties in Indianapolis have appreciated 10% per year on average over the past 30 years without fail. That's a
Yeah.
phenomenal number, and so you go back 30 years, that's a pretty good idea of what's going to happen in the next 30 years. So this is the return on a property like this.
Yes, good stuff. The last 30, 40, 50 years. It's been so even when you have a property like this, if you're doing 10% a year, that's basically $15,000 a year. So if you have four properties like this, you're
That's a pretty good idea of what's going to happen in the next 30 years.
looking at 15, 20, 30, 40, $50,000 a year, $60,000 a year just in your appreciation. So that's, and we mentioned the taxes as well. With passive income, you pay the least amount of taxes, essentially no taxes. You can create and yeah, vehicles like that because the worst income is active income. That's the ugly kind. That's taxed the most. Then there's portfolio income, like if you sell a house, if you flip a house. But with passive income, this is what the richest people in the world have, the people that write the tax codes. So you basically are able to walk away to set these up where you're not paying any taxes on these and it's generational. This is good stuff. This is good. Okay, so that was our deal dissection. Again, why should you listen to Joe and I? We have 50 years experience, 100 years on our team, but the most important reason is outcomes, just like this. These are the outcomes. We have better outcomes than anybody else in the world with how people get to 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 100K a month and beyond. Make sure you go through we've had thousands of success stories in over 20 countries, 15, 20 countries. Go through our success stories. Go click the link below, apply to become a GRS investor. This is a hero to do deals like this, doing 5 to 200K to do 5 safe houses like this, you'd be at 100K a month passive income forever. It takes 10 to 15 years. That's a bad side. You're not going to make any money. The good news is you don't have to do anything. You don't have to leave your house. Do whatever you do in the meantime, and you can create this kind of forever income using assets like this. Okay, so that's a
Let,
good deal
let me
section.
let me
Yes.
say just one more thing here.
Yeah.
Generational wealth, which is exactly what you're talking about here.
Yeah.
Generational wealth is the thing um, that keeps on giving. It keeps on giving after you're dead. And I think that, if you've got kids, if you've got other people that you love, uh, and you pass this on to them, and they keep the property, and you train them. You train them before you die.
Never sell. Yeah.
Never sell. Never sell. And if they hold on to this property, and when they need cash, they can refinance if they have to. They pull the cash out, let the tenant pay for it. and then they can live on that cash. And they can continue to have these properties for 50 years, 100 years, 200 years. I mean, there's houses that exist, in the East Coast for hundreds of years. You go to Europe, I mean, there's houses that exist for over 1,000 years.
Yeah.
Houses, they stick around for a
Mhm.
long time. And it may not be exactly the same house. It maybe it's new materials that have recreated it, but the land is still there.
Yeah.
And these properties will keep going and keep growing and keep accruing value until the end of the world, until everything else falls apart. So you might as well get a piece of this, and you might as well be what I like to call the epic ancestor. You want to be the epic ancestor that passes this on to the people that you love, and builds that generational wealth and brings them up, to the next level and the next level after that, so that they can be that in that top 1%. Because you get into that top 1% by having generational wealth, by having assets like this. And even one property, even if you just bought one of these properties and passed it on to your family when you die, think about what that means to them. If you die in 30 years and you bought a property like this today, and that property by the time you die in 30 years is now worth $500,000. Let's say it's gone up 300%. It's going to be worth more than that, 600,000. So, if it goes up to $600,000 when you die, uh, you know, what a gift to give to your family. Just one property. What a gift.
Yeah.
And by the way, there's a thing called the step up rule. So with taxes, so when you give it to them, they get to take it over, and it wipes out capital gains. So if they decided to sell that property the day after you died and then you gave it to them, they can sell it and pay no tax, no capital gain taxes on it at all. They can take the entire income from it because of this step up rule. That step up rule is a beautiful thing. My mother died last year, and she left her house to me and the kids. And we're taking that house, and we're liquidating the house, and we're gonna split the money up. And the none of us are gonna have to pay any capital gains on that money. So it's a beautiful gift to remember her by, and I'll always appreciate it.
Yeah, when you're selling it because there's other siblings involved, otherwise it wouldn't make sense to sell, you know. One of the
Yeah.
top things we say is that never, never, ever sell. I think, it is an interesting thing when you buy something that your kids are going to inherit. You treat it differently. You know that, and you start raising them differently. I look at the same situation I have with my daughter where we have in-depth conversations where I explain, like when we have a tenant, it's a weird thing. And I never had this. I did, I guess, but it was never explained to me in a friendly way, with my uncle or my family. But growing up, it was always like, don't screw this up, you loser. Like, but like I wasn't like saying like, what, here's how to take care of it. Here's how to, it wasn't, the tone. These kids today, you gotta be nice with them with everything. But like when we have a tenant, for example, we have a vacancy, my daughter's involved almost throughout the entire process. Here's what it means. Here's how you look up income. Here's how you get someone good who's in that property, because you need to get someone who's going to take care of it because it's yours, and you want to, this is basically a partner of yours. You are partners with your tenants, and you have this thing that's going to last. It's just weird to go to somewhere where it's going to outlive you, and it's going to outlive them, and it's going to outlive them. It's going to outlive them. There's this great definition of passive income. It's one of the best ones. I think Shaquille O'Neal said this, and I think it's probably the best definition I've ever heard. Where he said when he started to come across money, he was in rooms that he had never thought he'd ever be. He was like this inner city kid whose dad left him, and he, had no real hope of being in these rooms with these billionaires. And this billionaire walked up to him and he said, "You know what the difference between me and you is?" He was an NBA owner, NBA team owner. And Shaq said, "What?" And he said, "You and I both have a pile of cash. The difference is when I spend all my money, when I die and my kids die and their kids die and their kids' die, no matter how much money they spend, that pile of cash is untouched." And Shaq said that moment taught him exactly what he needs to do. He needs to spend money that his money makes. And so he stopped. And that's why he's still to this day, he's one of the most successful athletes ever because he stopped spending his money. He started making, I need to, and that what he's talking about is passive income, that you want to create enough passive income where you don't ever need to touch the money tree, live off the fruit of the money tree. And like any tree, it plants other trees. And soon you have a forest of money trees. And that is what these do. That's why these are so exciting because one of these is all you need. And then you can do as many more as you want. And that's what this creates generational, irreversible passive income.
Scalable. Yeah.
Right.
And,
That
and,
puts you
and
way above zero.
it also is a hedge for inflation because it goes up in value. If you have rents go up in value, this is something that stock market is not a hedge for inflation.
Right. Well, it's not a hedge for anything. I mean, Apple is probably the most powerful company you would probably say in the world today, more powerful than Google or anything, because Google, it's an interesting thing. You could just stop using Google. There's nothing really to, there's no reason. But with Apple, it's very, the reason there's people that text now because they believe Apple is the only place you can text, because of the way they set up that sound and all that, the texting, like Apple's really got, I mean, it's very difficult to compete with Apple. But Apple would probably be one of the most valuable companies in the world right now. But we all know they could go the way that MySpace went, the way that AOL went, the way that IBM went. They could all go that way. So if you have
As
money in
soon
the
as there's
stock,
new technology that kicks them out.
yeah, or just anything that's just cool, you know what I mean? Or like a new genius like Steve Jobs, like an awesome Mayo level, could come along. But the thing is that you're constantly worried about that stuff if you're in the stock market. Even if you have an index fund, you always have that. There's always a concern there. With real estate, it's not just a hedge against inflation; it's a hedge against everything. And would you rather teach your kids, like if I had to show them how to build businesses or learn how to write copy or how to do any of these other things that require, if you want to create equity, you have to learn how to grow a business and build a business the way that we talk about and the way we teach. It is extraordinary. It's one of the most difficult skill sets imaginable to build because you got to understand negotiation. You got to understand, you got to understand cold calling. You have to understand copywriting. You have to understand everything you have to know to do a video like this and to put together a page like Big Rio or to put together a page like Joe has. Imagine like the knowledge and the skill set it takes to do that. It's extraordinary versus if you just say, look, you don't need to go out and buy and sell companies or any of that stuff. Just manage this. Just manage this tree. Here's how to water it. Here's how to nurture it. And it's very easy to hire the right people to take care of it. And as long as you do that and you never sell, you'll be fine. You never have to worry about anything, financially at least. And then they can really start swinging for the fences and do things that they really want to do, work on things like time travel and, do all these other, bizarre, completely insane things. Because how differently would your life be? Even if it was only $1,000, $2,000 a month that you were making forever and you were making that from your childhood, if that's what you got from your parents, how differently would the decisions you the decisions you made have been? Like you would, would you have taken that, if you knew that you could go to college for anything, you didn't have to worry about an income, you didn't have to worry about having a job when you were done. You could go whatever you wanted to study, some undeveloped field that you want to maybe be a pioneer of, that there's not much money in it, but you were really into it. Like think about how many decisions you would have made that were different. There's one thing that's interesting. I know we're going off of this, like this is just supposed to be a deal dissection and we're done.
I went to film school, by the way. That's where I got my degree. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I
Yeah. Well,
kind
see,
of did
yeah.
that.
And yeah. And, but I've, a lot of my family goes like, Ivy League schools. And I have a cousin of mine that's a professor at MIT. And they always have these, whenever they take the top person, the top math engineer, nerd, STEM research person there. And they have this wall of all the top people. And it's a very interesting thing. I've been to some of these ceremonies now, these are some of the smartest kids in the world. There's some of the smartest people in the world there. And that's why, I try to like sneak in there and I'm not at all that level. These are like super smart people. But it's very interesting, including with my family. Pretty much everyone in that room, their family also went there. They graduated from there. Is that just a coincidence? Is that did the smartest people just happen to have the smartest kid? That there's no way statistically that that's the case. What happens is ever since they were born, they were grooming them basically for high IQ. They were able to do what they wanted. They were able to, if you could spend time with your kid, you would want them to work on like crazy finite math. You want them to do stuff to punch way outside their academic, their IQ class. But a lot of times the reason you don't is because you don't have enough time. But if you did have enough time, you could train a genius. Last thing I'll say, I know this is outside of the last thing I'll say is the longest study that's ever been done in the field of psychology is the Terman study of IQ. You can look this up, the Terman study of IQ. This guy was a super racist guy. He believed in eugenics. The black people were basically, they had the Leonardo DiCaprio scene in Django Unchained. You remember that? Where he's like, they got the 3 dots in the back of their skulls. This guy believed that, the Terman, Lewis Terman. So he had the study. He's like, I'm going to prove it. If you take smart people in America, we are in a meritocracy. If you take the smartest kids and you follow them through life, you're going to see that they're going to be at the top because they're just smart. So the people that aren't doing well, it's because they're dumb. And so he did the largest study, the longest study that's ever been done. They started this, they took kids that were in the top 1/4% IQ, super smart kids, and they followed them through lives, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 50 years, 60 years, 70 years, 80 years now. It's almost 90 years now. And they're still following these families and their kids and their children's children and seeing what happens to the highest IQ people. And you know what happens when you look at their achievement, the distribution of their achievement? It is identical to that of random people. What they found after looking at over 100 different variables is the single biggest variable that determines where you're going to end up in life is where you started. That has a bigger impact than anything else. A plant will not outgrow, a seed will not outgrow the pot that it's planted in, even if you're a genius, even if you're super high IQ, it doesn't matter unless your family can help you get the connections that will make you make the most of that, the connections and resources to make the most of it. I think about that quite a bit because you can have a genius kid, but if you don't give him something like safe houses or generational income, they may not know. And one of the studies, the line from that study I remember is that the person, it said something like the highest IQ person that you'll ever meet is more likely to be the person that is your cab driver or your waitress at a restaurant than it is to be your brain surgeon. Like that's like the person that could have done the most, but they don't because they don't get the right pot. So give your kids the right pot to, make sure that their seed is playing on the right pot. All right, I need to shut up. It's supposed to be a deal dissection. All right, so that's our deal dissection and a lot more. Guys, thanks so much. We'll see you next time. Thanks.
Thank you.